have no conflict of interest provision as president. It was many, many years old. This is for presidents because they don't want presidents getting, I understand, they don't want presidents getting tangled up in minutiae. They want a president to run the country.
Well, that's how he started the section about the conflicts of interest. Then he laid out his plan.
My two sons are going to be running the company. They're not going to discuss it with me. These papers are just some of the many documents that I've signed, turning over complete and total control to my sons.
After that, he brought in an attorney who would spell out the plan. Business operations will be turned over to a trust controlled by the two boys, Don Jr. and Eric Trump. Organization won't make any new deals with foreign partners, not all partners, just foreign partners. And an ethics advisor will be appointed to vet any deals for conflicts of interest. But as we understand, that advisor will be appointed by one Donald Trump. The attorney also went on to say that Trump isn't going to divest or sell the company to his sons because that would present, in her words, even more conflicts of interest. For more on this, let's bring back in Rick Ungar. He's host of Steele and Ungar on Sirius XM POTUS channel. He's senior contributor also at Forbes.com. All right, this thing was pushed back a couple times. Finally, we get the press conference. Did it give you nearly the amount of clarity you had hoped for as we're 9 days from him getting sworn in?
Well, no, to be honest. You know, as a lawyer, there are certain key words that trigger your thoughts. And when they started talking about the trust, the attorney did, she left out something really important that means everything. Is it a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust? If it's an irrevocable trust, then I feel a little bit better about it. But if it's a revocable trust, that means at any time, Donald Trump can revoke the trust any moment. He could do it tomorrow if he signed it today. And all of those provisions that are included as limitations on the trustee, they can't do deals with foreign entities, et cetera, that all goes away. So I really would like to know if it's revocable or not. If I were betting money, I would say it is fully revocable.
To that end, I'm going to give you two different takes on what we heard today. One, somebody, I know you know Norm Eisen. He served as an ethics advisor in the Obama administration. He was very strong after hearing the press. He said he's setting up a constitutional crisis on the first day that he takes office. He went on to say this is an invitation to scandal and corruption. Foreign money is going to flow through these loopholes. Is he exaggerating, or do you agree with him?
I think he's exaggerating, to be honest with you. I actually watched Norm and what he had to say, and I think very highly of Norm. Very smart guy, very much knows this area, but I do kind of think he's getting a bit overly hysterical. And there's reason to be concerned. I'm with him on that, but I don't think it's quite as dramatic as he's making it.
Now, there's two different schools of thought, which is, okay, everybody, whoever assumed the presidency before Donald Trump, they all played by the same expectation. This is the most important job in the free world, let alone the planet. And once you take the job, everything else comes secondary. Blind trust, whatever you're going to do, you're going to separate yourself. Conversely, nobody's had his kind of portfolio before they came into the Oval Office. To that end, his attorney today, Sherry Dillon, said the following, among other things. President-elect Trump should not be expected to destroy the company he built. And even people who are even more critical of this president than me say, you know what? Why should the kids who've worked here for 20-something years have to pay the price because the old man's president now? If he divests himself or at least separates himself, why shouldn't he be able to let the kids stay in the company that they helped build? My point to that, I'm curious yours, is he hasn't exactly earned the benefit of the doubt. In 2 years of a run-up, he's done zero planning. And more than that, they've already shown, the kids and the old man, that if it's not nailed down, they're willing to try and make a buck off it. So where do you fall on that? Is it too much to ask the Trumps to do this, given that it's different than what any other president brought to the office?
Well, the truth is they could have had it both ways. This was something else the attorney said that I very much disagreed with. She was trying to sell us on the idea that he couldn't sell it to his sons because it would raise a lot of issues with banks and more conflicts, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, he's going to leave it to them anyhow. So he could do the necessary estate planning that he could gift it to them now. That would be one way to do it. The other way to do it would be to sell it to them, and if they have to borrow money, as I suspect they would, to afford to buy his share, then he can take back a note. There's a lot of ways you can finance a transaction if that's your desire, and get around it. So
but you and I both know. But you and I both know why. Very potentially, the biggest reason he'd do that, he'd actually have to pay taxes on that, which he doesn't want to do.
But he's going to have to anyhow. He can plan his estate for a gift or for the death tax, but they're not that different. So there are ways that he could give it away. Yes, there'll be a tax repercussion, but there's going to be a tax repercussion anyhow.
Then you get to Jared Kushner. Now, explain to me, he's a smart guy. You would think there's smart guys surrounding this. Why do they bring in a huge financial Chinese operation who's going to buy, theoretically, the most valuable piece of commercial property, real estate, that Kushner owns? And they're the same firm, by the way, that has been shunned, at least by the current administration, for security concerns. Right. They do all this. They're almost proving the skeptic's point that there is no line for these folks here. They could have handled this, forget about different ways they could have done it. Just perception-wise, they're their own worst enemy.
Well, what I suspect is happening there is Jared's trying to get that deal done before he accepts the job in the White House. You notice that Trump didn't say anything about it today. And so certainly technically, if he does that, he's kind of off the hook on it. To me, the bigger question with Jared is whether or not his appointment violates the anti-nepotism laws. And you can make some pretty good arguments on both sides of that. We went through it on the show last night. He probably is okay with it, but you can make a really good argument where he's not okay on it.
So the Washington Hotel, how does anybody get around the fact that he's both landlord and tenant at the same time? There's an agreement that clearly seems to say you can't do this. Now, the idea that he says, well, any foreign dignitaries that come in will turn over, I don't even know if it's the total check that they write for the room or if it's just the profit.
No, she specifically said the profits, which is what made it such a funny comment. Can you tell me how you determine what portion of a fee to buy a room for a night is profit? I don't know how you do that.
And finally, Rick, you know how D.C. works here. This perception that, hey, come January 20th, no one's going to dare cross the guy because he's going to put his own guys in. That's not the way it works here. People are going to be looking under the rug for this. This will be a trickle, and then something will break, right?
Absolutely. There will be journalists whose assignments are to keep track of these issues. The conflict story will present the greatest opportunity for scandal in a Trump administration.
And that, my friend, is saying something. Rick Ungar, thank you so much for a review. Never boring. When we come back, we will change gears. Coming up next, Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson facing some pretty tough questions on Russia and Iran, and the latest from Capitol Hill as well when we return.